Dr. John Demartini is the king of conquering challenges. From being born deformed, unable to walk, speak, read, or write, to dropping out of high school and hitchhiking across the country to Los Angeles to surf the big waves. Then, while surfing in Hawaii at the age of 18 and being found in the tent he was living in with strychnine poisoning and taken to Whole Foods to watch Paul C. Bragg speak, that is when Dr. Demartini realized his vision and his mission. Dr. John Demartini has transformed lives worldwide, including mine, for 51 years with his signature event, the Breakthrough Experience. Doctor is now a healer, polymath, world-renowned speaker, best-selling author, and has an award-winning documentary film made about his life and his Demartini method and the Breakthrough Experience. Dr. Demartini.
Good morning, or afternoon, or whatever time it is.
Yeah, I'm in LA. It's 9 a.m.
It's morning here in Colorado also.
Oh, what are you doing in Colorado?
I'm doing presentations and some podcasts and some filming here, and and also another seminar from here to Australia this week.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Crap. I thought I had. Yeah, but I thought that don't you live on a ship?
I live on yes, a large private ship that goes around the world. I've been there for about 23 years. I'm off right now. I'm going to London after here, then Belfast, and then I'm back on the ship in Cartagena, Colombia. So I'll be there in about just a little over a week. Wow.
So you have your own private jet?
No, I do use various jet services. I'm more sailing than anything now, but I've done private jet services, but I don't have my own private jet now.
Oh, okay. But you have a driver and a chef and all that, right?
Yes, the ship has all that, and I haven't driven a car in about 35 years.
That's my legal name, Liberty Justice. I have a huge mission, Doctor. And that's why I just want to say I'm so grateful to have you here with me, because I feel like God sent you to me, you know?
Well, I think that there's the universe is kind of like it's filled with intelligence. So I think we all kind of resonate with what our innermost dominant thought is. And I think you're manifesting what your dream is, just like me. So we're all working together to try to contribute.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we should be doing. As we should be. But yeah, it's because of all the things I've been researching and reading and watching on YouTube. So YouTube kind of served you to me. You're like it's like when I listen to you, it's like listening to Napoleon Hill, Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett. It's like you're like all of the great teachers all combined into one. Amazing.
Thank you. I tried my best to try to research as much as I can in many fields to try to assist. So that's our goal.
Yeah. And so you're like me, you're Scorpio. You're born November 25th?
Actually, Sag, just after the Scorpio junction.
Oh, well, either way, you're still cool. Yeah. So you just turned 50, or I'm sorry, you just turned 71, right?
No, 70. I'm moving towards 71 now. Just 70. November was 70. So I'm working on 71 now.
Wow, congratulations. And you've been teaching for 50 years or 51?
52 years as of last November.
That's beautiful. Congratulations. Thank you. I mean, your work is just, it means so much to me, so much.
Oh, thank you.
I value you. Okay. And you have a great team behind you too. So I want to be like you, basically. That's why we're here together. Okay. So welcome, Dr. John Demartini. And I want to congratulate you also. All those nominations for the Breakthrough movie. Brilliant.
Yeah, I was very blessed I wasn't expecting that. I can't say I had an expectation on that. I was just felt very grateful and blessed that somebody valued what was produced. I can't make any claim on it because Patrick and Cassia, his wife, are the ones that produced it, the movie. I just happened to be in it. And so they did all the work. They deserve the credit, not me.
See, that's what I love about you, because you're smart. Being smart is being like, you're not, as you say, narcissistic, right? You're not narcissistic. You're not too altruistic. You're just right there level. And that's beautiful.
I attempt to be. I think I have my moments when I play both of those poles, but I most of the time I think I'm pretty stable. Centered.
Yeah, of course. Nobody's perfect, but you make me laugh. You make me laugh. I don't think people get your jokes.
I received an email from a woman in Brisbane, Australia, and she went online to GPT chat and asked, "Who is Dr. Demartini? How was that guy?" And GPT said a whole bunch of things about him, big long list of things. But one of the things it said is that he was a king of bad jokes.
I think your jokes are brilliant.
So I at least I'm a king of something.
You're the king of, oh my gosh. So, okay. So was your first degree in chiropractic? That was your first one, right?
Well, my undergraduate was in biology and psychology, chemistry. My doctorate was in chiropractic. I wanted to be involved in natural healing. And, but I've been studying and teaching prior to even those two. So yeah, that was the beginning of my education, but I guess I'm an audio kind of like that person where I voluminously read every single day and been doing it for 5 decades. So I just try to learn as much as I can because I feel it's my responsibility to learn as much as I can to be assisted.
Exactly. I feel exactly the same way. It is our responsibility. God put us on this earth. We have gifts and we all have that universal intelligence, but people don't use it because they get emotional. And like you said, they get into their amygdala and they're in the past. Like you said, I'm going to say exactly how you said it on the movie. You said, instead of being a victim of history, you could be a master of your destiny.
Yes.
Right.
There was a psychiatrist named Blanca Diaz. He was at a hospital in Houston, Texas, and took care of many of the astronauts and people who worked at NASA. And she said to me one time, when she came to my seniors program, the breakthrough experience, she said something of that nature. She said, you know, the people come here, they start as victims of history, but they leave their masters of destiny. And so I kind of tweaked that. And I give her credit for some of that terminology because I think that was her insight. But I've been standing on the shoulders of a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, now that you said that, I wanted to ask you, so I saw the movie and I've done the values determination test. I did the values determination test. That is a long test, but it's worth it. And so I was asking, you were saying on one of your YouTube podcasts, you were saying that if you do the values determination test, it will give you a competitive advantage in business. And can you explain how does it give you a competitive advantage?
Well, everybody has a set of priorities, a set of values that are fingerprint specific to them. This is the things that are most to least important. And anytime they're doing something that is high on their value, up at the top, they're spontaneously inspired to act. Whenever they do something lower, progressively lower on the value list, they require external motivation to keep them doing it. So you have an advantage when you're living congruently and in alignment with what you value most. Now in business, when you do, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain, medial prefrontal cortex, which makes you more objective and more reasonable and allows you to have more fairness in your exchanges with people, and you're more sustainable. So it helps business transactions because you're more reasonable and can make sure intuitively that you're in fair exchange with people, so you and they want to continue to do business. But when you're not living by your highest values and attempting to live according to others' values that you may be comparing yourself to, the moment you do, the blood glucose oxygen goes into the deeper nuclei of the amygdala, where we tend to subjectively interpret reality and distort reality. And we sometimes exaggerate ourselves with narcissism or minimize ourselves with altruism. We tend to create non-sustainable exchanges with people that are unfair. We try to get something for nothing and give something. That's why engagement is basically a reflection of how prioritized your actions are. If you can do what's deeply meaningful, what's most inspiring, what's highest in priority, and you can do it in a way that serves other people's highest values, you maximize your productivity and your, you might say, your desire for people to do business with you. So in a business setting, but in really all areas of life, living by priority gives you an enhancement, gives you a competitive advantage. If you don't fill your day with high priority actions that inspire you, your day fills up with low priority distractions. And in business, if you fill your day with things that are deeply meaningful, that really serve and contribute in a sustainable, fair way, you're going to automatically, incrementally build momentum towards greater achievement, financially as well as in business.
Yeah, I believe that. And before I move on to another question, to piggyback off of that one, I want to say, oh, you have no idea how much you mean to me. I mean, I'm so grateful, because some things that happened recently, and I was trying to fight. I felt guilty, basically, and I was trying to fight it, and because people try to, like you said, people try to enforce their values on you, and I allowed other. It's not like nobody makes me. People try to say, well, you made me feel this way. That's not true. But I felt like I owed basically my family, and I felt guilty because they kept telling me, and I'm like, look, this is most important to me. God gave me this mission. I own a business. I'm starting out. I'm not making any money, right? And so things got so bad, and finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going to forget about that. I don't need to talk to them, text them, be on beck and call or whatever. I don't need to feel guilty about that, right? And I'm not going to let them say things to me like I'm a bad person because I want money. So this listening to you helped me kind of really basically reinforce the things that God was already telling me for years, and ever since I had that, and like put that into my body and started practicing my highest values, my business is, and like, if you look at my YouTube channel, if I look at all the metrics and everything, it's proving to be true. You know what I mean? It's like, this is actually, and I just feel better in my body.
Well, our physiology, our psychology, our surrounding sociology offer feedbacks to us, guide us to our most authentic and inspired and productive selves. So everything that's going on in our business, our economics, relationship, feedbacks. And many people around us, see, nobody's like a genie there dedicated to us. They're dedicated
right.
to what their values are.
Right.
So if they see you doing something that challenges their values, they're going to probably speak back and try to do what they think is caring and loving to you. It may be not really in line with what you want. So you just say thank you, and then, but no thank you. I'm going to trust the voice and the vision on the inside more than opinions on the outside. I'm going to fulfill what I feel is my calling. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't get feedback and use that feedback to refine. But I was told by when I first opened up my practice many years ago, about 42 years ago, I had a financial planner that said, you make more income practicing than you do speaking at that time. And that was true. But I told him, I said, I'm going to practice for a period of time, and I'm going to be traveling around the world. And within just a short period of time, I'll be traveling internationally speaking. And he said, your finances don't show that. And I said, I realize that. But let's talk 6 months from now. Let's talk a year from now. Let's talk 2 years from now. And I bet you that changes. Well, I eventually decided to get a different financial plan because he wasn't quite that what he was up to. And then about 18 years later, I saw him at one of my conferences. And he said, I assumed that a doctor would make more than a speaker at the time, and I kept pushing you back into the doctoring. And I said, but I knew I was going to doctoring. I was going to delegate the doctoring, you might say, and the healing profession, and get doctors to work for me, and I was going to go out and present myself. And I did. And that's what builds the clinic, and that's what built work around the world. And he said, do you mind if we can go to lunch? I said, sure. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about maybe giving me some tips on how I can start a speaking business. So sometimes people will ridicule you, oppose you, even get aggressive at times because you're challenging their perceptions and their values. Yeah. But sometimes it's wise to just stick to what you and your heart know. I knew a boy that basically started out and says, I want to play the piano. And everybody said, well, you'll be a starving artist, you'll be this, you'll be that, that. Well, he's now at 78 years. He's 80, almost 2, 78 years of playing the piano. He's made millions of dollars doing it. And that's what he loves doing. And he looked back at all the people that told him that was crazy. And those are the people that eventually showed up in his performances in great halls around the world.
Yep. And that's why I think like it's so important. No, I don't see it in my finances. I don't see it here and there and there, but that's not the way it works. You have to do the work first, and then you are the example. Like you said, you exemplify the vision and the thing that you want to share. You have to become that first.
And also, and when you're wanting to generate an income, not everybody's going to oppose you. You're going to have way more people that are going to acknowledge you. Mm-hmm. You'll just have some high concentrated people that won't understand. But to be great is to be misunderstood, as Emerson said. So, yeah. But it still requires that you create, from what's inspiring to you, a product, service, or idea that truly meets people's needs. And as the metrics show, if people are more and more listening, it starts to meet needs. So if you're meeting people's needs and serving human beings, you increase the probability of receiving the repercussions and remuneration for it. But you do have to value yourself. You have to acknowledge that you're worth it. Because until you do, if we expect others to do that, before we do that, we'll be waiting a while.
That's right.
Acknowledge that we have a value and do our best to serve people and really meet their needs more effectively and efficiently than alternative people, we increase our ability to get to the top.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I always say, like, the name of my business is I'm Worth It, but I'm devaluing myself. I stopped giving as much, and now I'm giving way more than I've ever given because I know that I'm worth it. And I know I have to practice to get, like you said, you have to practice and get better to go from your being a doctor and going into speaking, right?
Can I share a story?
Yeah, please.
I had a learning challenge when I was a child. I had a speech impediment with reading. I didn't read till I was I had a lot of challenges in learning. And about 18, I decided I was going to start going to a dictionary. I was going to pronounce words 20 times, write the words 20 times, use it in a sentence 20 times, and give the meaning 20 times. And every night, my mom would test me 30 new words that I went over 20 times each before I was with her. And I grew my vocabulary significantly. If you add 30 words a day times 365 at the end of a couple of years, it's a lot of words. So I grew my vocabulary extensively, and I went from the bottom of my class, failed, to the top of the class. You know, it's work. But, you know, that's, people don't understand that, you know, sometimes it's work involved. But I grew my vocabulary, and I ended up having the ability to eventually speed reading. I started out not knowing how to read, and I eventually learned how to speed read. Well, I was teaching
Amazing.
speech reading at the University of Houston each term. And I started doing it in professional school. I taught it in professional school each term. Students all came, not all, but some of them. And there was a gentleman that came into my class that had very, very specialized glass with a telescope on it, and he was basically blind. But if he looked at this little telescope, he could make out each letter character, and he could spell the words in it. And he also had a muffled voice because he was sort of a deaf, partly blind, and mute.
Helen Keller.
But he came to my speed reading course. And the first time he came there, his name was Doug. The first time he came there, I thought, no way there's no possible way this guy's going to pull this off. I did the program again 3 or 4 months later for the next term. There he was again. But this time he must have practiced more than anybody else. He was able to start to do it. He came again the next term and the next term. And when I finally graduated from professional school, Doug asked, since I wasn't going to be speaking there again, if he could carry on the torch and continue the class.
Aww.
So the guy who I thought was least likely to be able to read and to speak properly, today is a professional speaker who is voluminously read and one of the most knowledgeable men I know in cancer research. So all I can say is that, if you just stay with something and you don't give up on it, you just might surprise yourself and transform and exemplify what's possible for others. It's giving yourself permission to shine, not shrink, to go and persevere. As Albert Einstein said, perseverance is one of the greatest keys to achievement. But if you just don't stop, you eventually get there. If every single day you move another little step closer to what you're set out to do, it becomes your destiny. There's no way you not get it. It's just staying with it. It's like Elon Musk. He's had explosion after explosion and setback after setback. But in one of the interviews by 60 Minutes, he says, I never give up because I just keep going. And that's the difference between somebody who's really congruent and aligned with what their real value is, because it's a calling, and somebody is just trying a little thing out, seeing if they can succeed at. Those, if they get setbacks, they give up.
Yep. If you don't, the only thing is, the only time you fail is when you stop trying.
That's it.
And
that's really failure is nothing but feedback to let you know that what you're pursuing isn't deeply meaningful. And if you give up, it wasn't really meaningful. So it basically it screened out the things that weren't highest priority and got you back to what is.
Yep, exactly. I was thinking about one of the things that made me laugh. I just saw it yesterday because I've been binging on your content, and you said it was about pain and pleasure, like the purpose of pain and pleasure, and you said, well, if I told you, I said it's true. Like if I told you that let me slam your arm in the door, and I'll give you $1 billion. I'll give you a private jet, every material thing that you've ever wanted in life. I'll give you a mansion. And if you let me slam your arm in the door, I'll give it all to you. And then people will be like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm like, hey, Dr. Demartini, please slam both my arms, baby. I'm ready. Let's go.
Well, I had a gentleman this last weekend here in Denver when I was teaching the breakthrough experience. He said to me, what about things that happen to you that are very painful and very, traumatic? I said, there are no such things. There are events that if you see the drawbacks to, they become traumatic. If you count up the upsides to them, you can transform them, as Anaxagoras, Greek philosopher, 1,600 years ago, said.
Say it again. What was his name?
Anaxagoras.
Anaxagoras.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he basically said that pain and pleasure are simply ratios of perception. So what I did is I told him, I said, if I slammed your thumb on the table with a hammer, you'd probably think that's traumatic and you'd be in pain. But as I did, if I stacked up, I said, I'm going to give you $1 billion cash if I slam it. He looked at me and he smiled, and I'll give you that mansion. I'll give you the things that you want, that you associate with pleasure. Not that they will give you pleasure, because they'll give you new sets of things. But if he associates that, and I stack up enough benefits to it, he'll say slam away, because he'll say that the advantages now, the benefits are now more than the drawbacks. So instead of it being traumatic, it'll be ecstatic. So it's the ratios of our perceptions, and we have control over the ratios of perceptions. That's why the quality of our life is based on the quality of the questions we ask. If we ask questions, what's the upside to this event? Instead of just dwelling on the downside and being victim of history, if we ask what's the upside, we can become master of destiny. And so it's about asking quality questions to liberate ourselves from the misperception that the world around us dictates how we are and feel, instead of our perception, decisions, and actions and what we can do.
That's right. I love how you said that, because I think I don't remember who said this, but I heard it's another person maybe was quoting somebody else maybe, but I think it was Evan Carmichael. He said, the wound is the way. And it's like, I know that everything that has happened or will happen to me in my life is not really happening to me. It's happening for me, because like, for example, my childhood, I went through all these experiences. People are always dwelling on the past, but I'm not dwelling on it. I just would say, like, I was raped by as a child by my dad. I was physically abused. I've been through abusive relationship with men and all these things. But all of these things, I say it's like my resume. These are my things I can use to help other people.
Well, I had a lady this last weekend who was, I'm guessing, probably late 30s. And she had a grandfather that used to interact with her when she was a child. And she was really playing the wounded woman, really angry and really hurt, really traumatized by it, running her story and going to therapy over this. And I asked her, I said, did you ever ask what were the advantages and benefits that came out of it? And she said, well, no. I said, well, let's look. And I said, what's the advantages in your life? And she said, I started studying martial arts. I said, did you do well in martial arts? She says, I was a champion. I was amazing at it. I said, do you see a direct correlation from your grandfather in martial arts? She says, I do. I said, did you ever thank him for that? Because she goes, no. I said, what's another benefit? As a result of your martial arts, where else did you excel? He said, well, I joined the military and I became very high in military positioning. And I used my martial arts and I was an incredible trainer and I got a lot of awards for that and acknowledgments for that. And then he gave me the discipline that I needed in my life. And I said, do you think that's correlated? And some sort of correlation or causal relationship to your grandfather? She says, I do. I said, did you give him thanks for that? Or did you let him know about the accomplishments you had? She said, no. And I said, and did that help you become more independent? And she said, definitely. He says, I don't depend on anybody, and I definitely didn't want to be dependent on a guy, and so I have my own company, and I'm an entrepreneur today. And I said, and you've done well financially? She says, yeah. I said, did you think that has anything to do with your grandfather? She said, yes. I said, did you give him a percentage of all the income that you made for his training? And she
that was on the movie, right?
She started laughing, and I said, and do you have any relationship in your life? And she said, I do, a special man. And I said, is he the opposite behavior of what your grandfather was? She started crying. And she said, I knew he was the man that I wanted to be with by the way he interacted with me. I said, so that means the training that your grandfather gave you somehow led you discerning the man in your life? And she said, it really did. And then we just started asking these questions, and I went around, how did it help her spiritually? Because when she had that experience, she dissociated and connected with her dissociated state, kind of a relationship that she perceived to be fine. And so she had this connection, and she used that as a connection, a survival connection. And so I said, well, has that been a value? She said, that's been a guide in my life. I said, well, did you thank him for that? And she goes, I never thanked him for almost anything. And I said, and then at that time, did you have a father? And she said, no, my father was gone. I said, did he play part of a father's role in some respects, even though he did things you didn't like? Did he do things you did like? And she started crying. She said, the reason why I endured it is because I didn't want to lose my father. He represented part of a father figure. I said, so he gave you a father figure. He provided partly for the family. He was there and he did this, and he did the things that were actually part of the way. So instead of being a victim of history, you could be a master of destiny. And anything you can't say thank you for is baggage. Anything you can't say thank you for becomes fuel. And so it's for you and not to you, as you said. And when she was done, she looked like she'd lost about 5 years worth of moping in her head and in her facial expressions. And she was smiling. And then I said, is there anybody here that reminds you of your grandfather in the room? She picked a guy that was a little bit older and a big, tall guy. I had him sit in chairs, and I said, what would you love to tell your grandfather? And she opened her heart. She actually then appreciated it and said, the events that I did at the time, I didn't see how it would serve me. And it's not something that I thought and wished, but I can see now that it's turned into one of the greatest opportunities of life. In fact, thanked and hugged, and now her wound that she'd been carrying all those years is lifted. And I'm not saying that what he did was good or bad. I'm saying it's an event. Now, how do you use it to your greatest advantage? In our society, we like to label things. We label things good and evil, and we have moral hypocrisies. We don't understand repressions and expressions in society. And so we have these ideals and these fantasies about how life's supposed to be. But the truth is, everybody has challenges in their life, and that's usually what makes them great.
Exactly. Yeah, because you said that some of the most fulfilled people in your book, how to make a hell of a profit and still get to heaven. I love that. And you said that some of the most fulfilled people on this planet are the ones that are using, like you said, I'm going to give the world my service of love, and nothing's going to stop me. You said that in the breakthrough. And you said those are the most fulfilled people that are using all of their experiences to serve others. And they're I forget how, I didn't write it down. I did write it, but I have too many notes. but you said that they're benefiting off it and they're reaping the rewards. But I want to ask you this, a couple things. So about the breakthrough experience, you were talking about in the movie, number one, that was your breakthrough moment, right? When your mom had said to you, basically, John, I don't care what you do, whether you're sleeping outside in tents in LA again, or whether you're a billionaire like you say you're going to do, I don't care. No matter what, I'm always going to love you. That was your breakthrough moment right there?
Well, that's one of them. I mean, the night I met Paul Bragg was a very inspiring and meaningful moment. But when my mom said, I just failed a class, I was 18 years old, I took a GED, I miraculously passed the GED test. I tried to go back to college, or to school, because I dropped out of school. And I failed. I got a 27, and I needed a 72. And I just really failed. And I was really distraught because I thought that I wanted to be a teacher and travel the world, but that really, for a moment, made me question whether that's possible. And I was sitting there having a mopey moment, and my mom saw me crying in the living room. She walked up to me and she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, son, what happened? I said, Mom, I blew the test. I needed a 72 to pass. I got a 27. And she said, I told her, I said, I guess I'll never be able to read or write or communicate or never amount thing, never go very far in life, which is what my first grade teacher told my parents. And she looked at me and she put her hand on my shoulder again and she said, son, whether you become a great teacher, healer, and philosopher and travel the world, whether you return to Hawaii and ride giant waves like you've done, or return to the streets and panhandle as a bum, I just want to let you know that no matter what you do, son, that your dad and I are going to love you no matter what. We just love you. So just know that. And that was a real important moment, a turning point, when I didn't know if I could pull off what I dreamed. And when she said that, my hand went into a fist, and I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading, studying, and learning. I'm going to master this thing called teaching, healing, and philosophy. I'm going to do whatever it takes, travel whatever distance, pay whatever price to get my service of love across the planet. And I got up, I hugged my mom, I went in and I got that dictionary and I started memorizing 30 words. And I overcame my learning problems and practiced speaking and overcame my speaking problems and learned how to override my reading and writing problems with dyslexia. And it was a slow, steady, progressive, incremental, metric progress. But I did it. And I think that a lot of times people aren't quite willing to do the effort that it takes to conquer these things. I was just blessed to be driven at that moment when my mom said that. So thank you, Mom, for that turning point.
Love you, Mama. Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. You said in your book, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but basically you said that progression is in how to make a hell of a profit and still get to heaven, you're saying like progression is from God, and it always goes with financial wealth as well, spiritual and financial progression. And then you said that people that are poor, they go backwards because they're involved into, they always want everything right now, instant gratification. It makes you pay. But if you're willing to wait, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but if you're willing to wait, then that pays you.
Well,
right.
When you live in alignment with what you value most, you increase the probability of achievement. When you achieve, you tend to want to achieve more. So you keep expanding your space and time horizons until you start setting goals per day, per week, per month, per year, per decade, per generation. Eventually you set goals that are legacies, immortality goals. So every time you are rewarding yourself for living congruently according to who you are, authentically, you keep expanding. But the second you try to live by lower values, which are often injected values from outer authorities, trying to fit in, trying to live by what you should do, ought to do, supposed to do, got to do, have to do, need to do, must, you shrink. You procrastinate, hesitate, frustrate. You don't have discipline, reliability, and focus, and you tend to then feel unfulfilled, and then you look with your amygdala for immediate gratification to compensate. And immediate gratification costs, but long-term vision pays. And when it comes to wealth building, if you receive $1 or $10 or $100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or $1 million, if you spend it on immediate gratification, on consumables that depreciate, you live today, but you don't have it working for you. You're a slave to the money.
Yep.
Because you're now buying things that accumulate and fill your house with, and now you're a hoarder. But if you actually invested in assets that actually grow, then every time you do, you're deferring gratification. And now the investments that you put it in, that's an asset, now pay you, and you become its master. 42 years ago, when I was 27, 43 years, I didn't really understand wealth building. I was good at making some money, but I seemed to spend it on buying books. I used to buy 40 to 70 books a week. And I was just buying it on education, seminars, books. I just wanted to learn. But I never had the money working for me. I had my intellectual property working for me, but not finances. So at 27, I was asked by a financial planner that shifted my thinking. And I started buying. I started out at literally $200 a month, $50 a week, $10 a day. I started to buy quality companies. I started buying an index fund and buying quality companies. And I just made the habit of doing it, and I increased it to 300 to 500 to 750 to 1,000. I just kept increasing until eventually, in 1 month, I put in $250,000. And I just kept investing, buying things. Well, eventually, the money that was passively generated by the investments started making me more money than I was working. And I became financially independent. But I deferred the gratification. I lived simple, and I saved and invested a lot. And now, I'm pretty blessed. I can live a pretty extraordinary life, and it's only a tiny portion of whatever my passive income generates. So most people don't have the patience and the temperament, as Buffett says, to defer gratification and to allow compound interest and capital gains to work in your favor. And it's not it's not very complex. It's so simple. I can teach people how to do it very quickly. But once they do it and they get the hang of it, it changes their financial destiny. So I'm a firm believer that your immediate gratification and your impulses are going to interfere with long-term accomplishments. So be patient, be perseverant, be clear on your purpose, and think about how you can make a contribution to the world. It's the most fulfilling thing. I've asked millions of people in seminars, go to the moment you've had the most fulfillment. And 99% of the time, it's when they did something that contributed to another person's life, and the person said thank you, and it was a fair exchange, and it was remunerated.
Amen. Yes. So I want to ask you this. This is like probably the most important thing about when you did that episode on your show. That's why I had to get your book, How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven, because you said that You said it on the show, you said it in the book, you said this many times. It's like, this is going to make people mad. But if you're poor, it is because you don't care enough about humanity, right? And then also the other thing is that you said, if you're just giving people like money, homeless people on the streets, or you're giving to the food banks and all that stuff, you're enabling them. You really, what you're doing is you're hurting them, because you're robbing them of the opportunity to learn how to be self-sufficient, right?
Yes. Yeah. If they're not, it was the Rockefellers that I read a book on their philanthropic objectives, and I learned something from that. And it was, don't ever rob people of dignity, accountability, responsibility, or productivity, or you'll destroy them. You won't build humanity. You'll actually destroy it, because it will become dependent. And you'll have unrealistic expectations. And anytime life doesn't match your unrealistic expectations, you have sorrow. So you breed sorrow by rescuing people, rescuing desperation. Better to inspire them in creative actions that make them self-sufficient. It's the old proverb, feed them for a day, or teach them how to live for a life. So
Yes.
I'm a firm believer of that. I was speaking in Iowa at a church many years ago, probably 20, maybe more. And about 25 years ago, I think. And there was a minister there that I met with behind where I was going to speak. We chatted privately. And he said, well, my church is kind of stagnant. We haven't really been growing. It's been kind of dead. And I said, well, what's the inspired vision that you're bringing that makes people want to participate in doing something that's growing? He stopped and he reflected and he thought, well, maybe I'm not doing much. I'm surviving instead of actually being inspired by something. I said, well, what can we do that would be inspiring? He said, well, we need some renovation of the church. And I said, well, then let's go raise some money. Let's go make it happen. And so I went out there on it's a lecture to his group, filled up his church. And I said, I'm going to make some statements here that at first are going to shock you. But by the time I'm through, I have a feeling it's going to have deep meaning. And I said that if you're impoverished or poor or feeling lack, not abundant, it's because you're probably not really caring about humanity. If you cared about another human being, you would find people out there that need some service, and you'd find a way of giving them such a service in some form of fair exchange where it would be sustainable. If you do it for nothing, you're eventually going to burn out. And if they do it for nothing, if they don't pay, you're going to burn out eventually. And if you do it and you get more than what they deserve, they're going to burn out. They're not going to want to come back. But if you create a financial fair exchange, a sustainable transaction, they're both going to want to continue. So I went in and I did a whole discussion on what they could do, and then to find something that would be deeply meaningful and inspiring. And I asked all the congregation if they were impacted and benefited by the minister here. And then I told them I probably embarrassed the minister a bit, but I said, the church is starting to undergo entropy and to break down, and it needs to be renovated. Is there anybody here that would like to be in a freshened and inspiring and growing church? I'll put the hands up. I said, then let's help him build this church. And he just told me his vision, and I had him come up on the stage with me, and he shared his vision with tears. And I said, let's do it. Now, this wasn't a big and wealthy congregation, but we raised $13,000 right there on that one day for his new renovation of his church.
Wow.
And he made a commitment that he was not going to stop until that was done. He was going to do that. And so people wanted to do it because they had a cause bigger than themselves. And it was something that would help them and the next generation and the next generation. And they got a cause bigger than themselves. And they raised the money. And they didn't think they could afford their own food sometimes. They didn't think they could afford their new car. So the greater the cause, the greater the outcome. That's one of the reasons. I mean, look at the cause that Elon Musk is generating. Let's go to Mars. Let's make it more efficient government. All those things, people rally around things that are productive and efficient and effective that change the world. Whenever we do that, we have a cause, and it inspires and it draws wealth to it. That's why it's worth $300 billion, because it keeps doing something that serves.
Yep. The bigger the challenge, the bigger the victory. Right?
The bigger the challenge, the bigger the individual that comes out of it.
Woo! Yeah, I'm gonna be real big, doctor. I'm gonna be big like you. When you were talking in your YouTube episode, you mentioned you write for Jet Set magazine, and so I looked at this article that you were talking about and about philanthropy, right? Prudent philanthropy,
Yes,
and you remember that, right?
yes.
So, but you were saying basically that a lot of these organizations, these nonprofits, are really they're guilting people, and the church, even the churches, like they make these huge profits, but you don't look into it, and you just give it to people because you feel guilty. And even you told that woman in the church, like, you're guilting people into giving, but you're also preaching them into poverty, basically, because someone else said that, but I took that phrase, and I thought, wow, man, I think you're only the second person that I've ever heard say anything like that, you
Well,
know?
I did some research. I do write for Jet Set magazine and the editions, and which is basically a magazine that goes to private jet owners and other people that have
Oh,
aspirations. And I did research on philanthropy and on organizations, 501c3s in America.
mm-hmm.
And there are some, I won't say all, but there are some organizations that when you donate a great percentage, some cases up to 87% of the donations go towards telemarketing to raise more funds.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it goes towards management. And so some people live in the kind of the illusion that every dollar is going towards this great cause that they think. But the truth, it takes money to manage these big organizations. And so a lot of the money is going towards the management of the organization. Now, if the organization receives its money and manages it wisely, and it invests it, then and it compounds, then the amount that they give to their cause is a progressively increasing amount, and you're making a contribution. But you do want to do research and make sure that the contribution is truly making the difference that it claims and that you desire. So doing a little research is to everybody's advantage. It keeps their organization, philanthropic organization, integral. It makes sure that people get results, and it makes sure you're not squandering money on telemarketing, for instance, unless the
Mm-hmm.
telemarketing still adds ultimately more in the long run. So I just tell people, when you're doing philanthropy, not just be blind and go by what somebody says, because that's not always what matters. What's actually being done is what matters. So go and investigate, and if they're not willing to give and be transparent, maybe consider finding somebody that will be. Because transparency means that they're not hiding anything, they're not lying. They're doing it, and here's the facts. And then you can make an informed decision instead of an emotional decision, and make sure
Yep.
that it's actually doing something. It's actually accomplishing. I had a woman in Vancouver area that came to the breakthrough experience. We got into a discussion, and she said that she had been sending money to children that were somewhat starving in Africa. And I said, is there education associated with the giving? She said, no, we just feed them. I said, well, if you just feed them, they'll multiply. If you don't educate them, they won't stop multiplying. And they won't be
Right.
productive. And you'll end up making dependence out of it. And she said, well, let me stop and think about that. And then she really realized that she had a young girl that she was communicating with that she helped take care of since the girl was 9. By the time she was 12, she had her first child. By the time she was 15, she had 2 children. And now she was
Wow.
feeding 4 people, and the girl still didn't have a job. So now she's
Wow.
just actually breeding dependencies
Mm-hmm.
and dependence. And I said, if you put education in the equation, because that's one of the greatest things you can do, and make it where they're self-sufficient, then what will happen is now you're building a self-sufficient, sustainable model that's philanthropic, that's really building humanity and building a service. So she decided to go back to her organization, find another organization, and to join the forces together in the 2 organizations to make sure that they built educational school systems, made sure that they were doing education to decrease the probability of fertility and mortality cycles, and to make sure that they were able to stand on their own 2 feet. And they started metricing that. And now her giving was more meaningful, more productive, and not just assumed. So that's
Wow.
that's why you want to make sure that you're actually accomplishing what's in your heart.
Yeah. So I love how you said that though, because that's like one of the main motto of my business is teach a man to fish, eat for a day. Because here's the thing, like you said, it's not sustainable. And it makes people feel more unworthy because they still, like, in our schools, they don't teach it. They don't teach it in, like, our parents don't teach that. And when I first started out my business, it was just me trying to learn, and because I wanted to help my family, but I realized I was not helping them because they were dragging me. I allowed them to drag me down with their guilt and everything because they refused to heal. But I had to heal myself, and then I had to start educating myself so that I could just exemplify that instead of telling them things. I'm like, they don't get it. They don't get it. Well, it doesn't matter if they get it or not. I get it, and I'm doing it. So I don't need to tell them anything anymore, but to show them with my results. But I just love how you said that, just be self-sufficient. And then I was wondering, I read that you have I think it's in your book, you have a school, a philosophy or something. You have your own school that you created?
Well, I have students around the world. In fact, about 2016, I think we had in our database people from every country. So we have millions of people that we've impacted by media, and we have students from every country. So it's not a school of mortar and bricks. It's a school of people.
Right.
I originally called the curriculum I had the Concourse of Wisdom, which is a gathering of people dedicated to wisdom.
Yeah, that's what it was.
My school is that. And I've spoken in many universities and many colleges and schools and things. But my dream was to have a group of people around the world that were learning and exemplifying how to live a masterful life in each of the areas of their life. And so that's my school. It's like I said, it's not a building. I'm not interested in something that undergoes entropy that,
right.
And on it. I'm interested in putting every dollar into some sort of education system that's making a difference.
Yes.
So my students, when I get letters every day from the students around the world, and I do every day, that's my remuneration. And in addition to the economics that I'm blessed with, that's the remuneration, to hear all of the achievements that they're accomplishing. And that some of them are, I had one of my students said to me the other day, he's got 3 Grammys today. When I met him, he was one of those starving artists. He's got 3 Grammys today, and he's very well off today. But it's just.
Who is it? Can you say who it is?
Rather not say.
Okay.
Just 3 Grammys, and he's a major singing performer.
Okay.
A musical performer. So, but what I can say is that that's the reward. The financial reward, yes. The lifestyle's fine. I don't really need a lot of big lifestyle. I've got the best lifestyle. I don't need more lifestyle. What's interesting is the transformation in people's lives and what they've done with it and what they've accomplished with it. That's it. That's the thing that brings a tear every day.
That's what I'm saying too. I always say my biggest gift is to watch you live your best, live in your vision and your values and just making a difference in the world, because that's the greatest feeling in the world. And when people tell you that and they got that gratitude. But you were saying that a lot of people, that when they become wealthy and famous and stuff, they just they don't sustain it because they never really healed from that. Like, they're all prideful and everything. And then we're concerned with, what people think, and they want it to look good to other people, right? But then you had also said that you worked with Steven Tyler, and was that something that he needed help with, or you were helping him like overcome addiction?
Actually, I didn't work with Steven Tyler. I worked with Liv's husband, who's also a rock star, and it indirectly involved Steven and also Liv and also Royston. Almost every relationship in the world has its challenges. And every marriage has ups and downs and ins and outs and hugs and slugs, as they say. And so assisting people in transitioning through those challenges is rewarding. And it has a ripple effect, and it impacts people, like you say, and it impacted some of those individuals. But I've been blessed to work with all different types of people. Some that are very celebrated, and others that are people that live in townships and have nothing to show for, on the outside, but they're really spirited on the inside, and they just need some education. I've been blessed with all the above, from the wealthiest people in the world to the most impoverished people. And I've had tears of inspiration working with all the above. Some are really extraordinary. Some of the most extraordinary are the ones that had very little, and they turned it out into something amazing. And sometimes, Just because you have something doesn't mean that means you're fulfilled in life. It's not. Your fulfillment is the contribution. I always say money without meaning leads to debauchery, but money with meaning leads to philanthropy.
Yeah.
And the people I know, I've met a guy just this week, 4 days ago, who had his house burned down. He ended up receiving $10 million for the destruction of his house and his business and cars and everything. And so he looked at it and he goes, wow, I received $10 million, but he didn't feel that he really earned it. It was interesting. He didn't really feel that he earned it, and he was squandering it, and it was disappearing, and it was just disappearing quickly. And I told him to make a list of what he did to earn it, because if you don't feel you did something that contributed to earn it, money without meaning tends to lead to debauchery. He was finding himself squandering it, and then, not having to work and going out and drinking and doing stuff. And we really had a powwow. And I explained to him, what did he do to earn it? Because if you don't have meaning, you'll squander it. And he really had some tears of gratitude on the realization of how to manage that, because he never had that money and that much to manage. But when you manage money wisely, you receive more money to manage. And so I gave him some tips on what he can do to make that and continue to grow it. Otherwise, it just wandered away and it'll be back to where he started.
That's in the Bible. To whom much is given, much is required. And I like 2 Corinthians 9:6. If you give sparingly, you'll reap sparingly. But if you give generously, you'll reap generously. That means that with your work as well. It's everything that you in the parable of the talents and everything. And I was just thinking that you said that. You sound like Tony Robbins. Were you one of Tony Robbins' mentors?
I can't say. I have no idea how much Tony has read my work or been influenced by my work. I think we're both individuals. I met him in 1986. Did a fire walk with him in 1986. I had been doing my teaching since 1973. So he knew about me and I knew about him, and I'm sure we've overlapped. We've been on conferences together. And he even wrote a little comment about one of my books, Count Your Blessings. But, here's an extraordinary guy. Tony's done extraordinary things. He's worked very hard. He's had challenges and setbacks, but he just keeps persevering. And I'm the same way. We have different trajectories. I think he's a greater salesperson than I am, and I'm probably a greater researcher than he is. But at the same time, we have different values. And we go in different directions with it. But you can't not appreciate people who go out and exemplify what's possible. But I don't know how much influence. I couldn't tell you. I'd have to call him up and say, hey, Tony, is there any influence that I've given you? And if he'd said yes, and I could tell you what it is, but I'd have to get it out of his own mouth to find out what influence I've had. I think he's had an influence on me. I think I've had an influence on him. I think all of us, think about all the people you're reading and you're listening on YouTube. They all have bits and pieces of influence.
Right. Yeah, I think that, I've only known you as far like meeting you on YouTube, watching you and reading your books and your articles and all that stuff, and I've done the value determination and all that. But you have had a huge, huge influence on because when I go, like I said, you changed my life. Because when I watch you, I'm always like, I have to go back and watch it again. I have to Google words and the meanings of words. And it's really like you are the exemplification of what's possible. Like you are like I always say, there's no excuses. I've been through so much in my life, and the rape from when I was a kid, and drugs, alcohol, cigarettes. I quit all that stuff, and all the things that I've conquered. And like I'm just like, there's no excuses. Like there's a guy in a wheelchair. He has no arms, no legs. His name is Nick. He's a pastor. And now you were born deformed. You couldn't read. You had all these things that they told your parents that you would never talk properly, and all these things that they said, but you used your setbacks to make it into a big comeback, and but to serve others with it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think, I've seen people, I knew a friend, a doctor friend of mine that I used to consult for had a brother who was a little older, who had a son who was a surfer. And he ended up having an accident.
You said he had an accident?
Yeah, he had a surfing accident. And I remember them flying him from Los Angeles to Houston to come to my breakthrough experience. And they wheeled him in a wheelchair. And I remember getting down literally on my knees in front of him. And he was looking down and he wanted to end his life because he wanted to surf and he came surfing.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, listen, his name was Jesse. He's a really inspiring guy today. But I said, Jesse, it's up to you. You know, you may not move your arm and leg, but maybe you can engineer or create some other new innovative idea on how to surf without arms and legs. Maybe there's something there. So if you have a big enough reason for doing something, you'll find a solution to it. Anyway, after our conversation, he got creative. He looked up and he did design a surfboard that would return itself upright, and he was strapped into it. And all he had to do is have somebody to push him into the wave. And he started riding, and he's ridden giant waves with only his movement of his head.
Wow.
So he ended up doing that, and he's an inspiration. And he worked with the gentleman that was Superman, you know, that had been a quadriplegic from, I think, a horse fall or something. And so, yeah, this guy is a real inspiration. So it doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter what you've been through and experience. What matters is how you decide what you decide to do. You have control over perception, decisions, and actions. Change your perception, change your decision, change your action, your life changes. And that is something that we can sit there and wallow in pity party, or we can get out and go out and do something that makes, you know, some sort of difference. I know I have had both. I've had moments when I played, you know, so-and-so did this or whatever, and I acted like a little baby. But I also realize that doesn't accomplish it, and get back on your feet and go and start doing things. So that's the main thing, is just give yourself permission to go out and shine that thing.
Amen. Or you can just start cussing too, and that will give you all those good endorphins.
Well, cussing's okay too. I don't have a problem with people cussing sometimes, because sometimes it does release endorphins and enkephalons when they don't have alternative ways of dealing with it. So that is a temporary way of dealing with life.
Yeah, it can. I'm really shocked. You got all this neuroscience behind it. It's like, have you ever seen The Big Bang Theory, the show, the Big Bang Theory?
Well, I think I've seen a bit of it. I didn't watch a lot of TV, but I think I saw a few moments of one.
Yeah, well, it's just because when I watch you, it reminds me of that. You're talking about neurobiology and philosophy and psychology and everything. It's like you got all this because you have so much experience and you've read so many books and so much education that my brain's like, whoa, it's so much. I got to keep going, watching over and over and over and watching your stuff because I want to write notes. I can't take notes fast enough, you know.
Yeah, well,
but I want to put it in here.
Somebody said listening to me is like drinking from a fire hydrant.
Fire hydrant? Why is that?
I sometimes output a lot of words very quickly, and people, like you said, they have to get a dictionary out and start following the words. It's not intentional to try to do it. It's just the words that, and I've been blessed to do a bit of reading, so you accumulate words as you go. I was so inspired to be able to speak words at one time. So I grew my vocabulary till I'm a polymath, so I've studied many different things.
So you've stored it all that time that you kind of make it up for lost time from when you were a kid and you couldn't speak, and right. So that was basically your greatest void. Was basically feeling that was your greatest void, feeling like uneducated, you weren't worthy, you weren't smart enough. But then once you fill that void in your life, you're able to use that in service of others, right? Well,
Einstein said, "Live with holy curiosity." If you think you're enlightened, time to reincarnate and start over, because it's you know, no matter how much you know, there's always what you don't know, and what you don't know, as Socrates said, is way more than what you know. So the more you know, the more humble you can get on how much you don't know, and that's the journey. So I just keep adding as much as I can within the time I have, as long as I got this little body here to work with. I'll just keep feeding it.
Yes. Because I'm just like you. When I die, doctor, when my body is gone, I just want to leave empty. Like, I gave you all I got, God. I gave it all I got. Left it all out here on the field, you know.
Did you do everything you could with everything you were given? That's the question you asked.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. And you said, I love this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "Envy is ignorance. Imitation is suicide." And you said that in your book, How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven, you said that basically we are all abundant, but the only problem is the only thing we lack is awareness. So is that when you go to, for example, when you go to the breakthrough experience, when somebody attends your breakthrough experience live, you said it's like 24, 25 hours with you and everything. Is that what you do? Is you teach people awareness, how to ask the proper questions,
Yes.
and then bring their mind accountable into a balance sheet, basically?
That's it. I help people. I say that Claude Shannon, in his information theory, said that disorder is missing information. And reclaiming the missing information can bring disorder into order. And disorder is another name for chaos. And so what I do is I have people who are in the breakthrough experience that have varying areas of their life that's unclear, that they feel are a little chaotic, that they don't feel quite fulfilled in. And I basically do is help them ask questions to see the hidden order in their apparent chaos so they can be masters of their destiny, not victims of their history. And when they do, they realize that nothing was missing. They intuitively were being guided to try to wake this up, but they just weren't quite, their impulses and instincts, their amygdala were stopping the intuitive wisdom of their executive functions. So I basically tried to help them see the hidden order in their chaos so they can be appreciative of their life and see that it's on the way, not in.
Amen. I like how you said that. I have a question because I might have to, because I know you have a lot to do, so we might have to end it like pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go.
Okay. You got a few minutes ago. Okay, just one quick question because I Googled it. I can't find it anywhere. But you mentioned this word, a psychostat. Like we have you said they always say we have an internal thermostat, and like if you're set to 10,000, but you can only make 10,000, but then you said this word psychostat. Is it PSYCHOSTAT? Did you make that up or something? Because I can't find it anywhere.
I did. I'm a neologist. I make up words periodically. I was trying to use it as a thermostat. If the temperature goes up, you sweat. If the temperature goes down, you shiver. And so your brain has a homeostatic set point. And your psychology does the thing. It's called a moral licensing effect and hedonic adaptation. So anytime we go up and get all proud and cocky, we give ourselves permission to do something that humbles us to get us back down to go back to the set point. When we do something we feel ashamed of, we go back and do things that we're proud of. And so nature automatically oscillates around a set point. And I call it the psychostat. Psycho just means mind, and stat means homeostat. So we have a homeostatic mechanism to help us stabilize our authentic self.
I love that. I was like, I wonder if he made that up because I could not find that anywhere. Yeah. So, but I'm gonna talk more about. I'm gonna do like intros and everything afterwards. But man, you're brilliant. You are just brilliant. And hopefully, if you're down for it, or up for it, whatever term you want to use, because you're a little bit older. But if you're up for it, I would love to have you again on the show because I want to talk.
Show. Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to talk more about like your diet, your food that you eat, and all that kind of stuff. But this time I just wanted to focus more on service and how we can, get rid of that shame, guilt, and all that. But I wanted to come to the breakthrough experience, but I guess you're not going to be here again in LA until like September.
I think, right? The second or third term. Yeah, the third quarter.
Yeah. Why do you make me wait so long? I love it. I love it. But you know what? I just want to thank you because you're stimulating the economy, because this is one thing you didn't mention, but not only are you serving others through your education and your intelligence and all the wisdom that you have, but you're also like, you have Justine, you have that company, Mitel Media, and then you have Emily and all those people on that team. And you're actually helping others do what they love to do and serve others also, and be into their executive functions. So you're doing so much for so many people, and I know that your legacy is going to live on forever.
Well, I hope to contribute something valuable enough and sustainable enough that it has a ripple effect. It was Seneca, the Roman poet philosopher, that said, "You measure an individual by their most distant ends." And the magnitude of space and time.
The most distant what? What was that? Most distant what?
Most distant ends.
Oh, Okay.
And the magnitude of space and time in one's innermost dominant thought will determine the level of conscious evolution they will attain. And that means that how big is your vision? How long are you willing to work towards it? And that'll determine the impact you have. And hopefully that I can do something that will stand some tests of time and, pass on. And I believe that there at least be a few people when I pass on that will continue to work. I know that. So let's see if let's come back and join up and do another podcast maybe 1,000 years from now and see how we do.
I will do this till the day I die. I'm just like you. And yeah, you've just done so much. I had a thought I wanted to say, but I have to go to the bathroom, so I can't remember. But your story is just, you're a genius. Brilliant. I want to stand up, standing ovation. You've done so much just for me. And I know you've done so much for the world. You're just beautiful story, Doctor. Beautiful.
Very well, thank you. And thank you for the time and giving me the opportunity to share with your audience. And may we continue to fulfill our missions and be of service.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Have fun.
Okay.
Thank you
so much.
If you enjoyed this episode with Dr. Demartini and me, Liberty of I'm Worth It, Inc., make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with a friend. Go and do the values determination test because it will change your life. You're worth it. Subscribe.